The Sunday after the presidential election, I was at Dadeland Mall. I was in the parking lot of Dadeland Mall, and I called President-elect Trump on his cell phone to congratulate him on his victory. And one of the first things he said to me is, "What are we going to do to help the Cuban people?" A few weeks later, I had the honor of flying with him to Central Florida on Air Force One. And he again, in the midst of that conversation, asked, "What are we going to do to help the Cuban people?" My wife and I had the opportunity to dine with him and the First Lady in the White House. And in the middle of that conversation, he asked, "What are we going to do to help the Cuban people and the people of Venezuela, who are also living under a dictatorship?" Six weeks ago in the Oval Office, the President of the United States, gathered with members of his cabinet, made a very clear decision. We are going to do whatever it takes to empower the Cuban people so that they can be free and live in a democracy and have economic and political liberties that they deserve, like everyone else in this hemisphere deserves. And he has not faltered in that commitment. The cooperation, the hard work, the commitment that this White House and that President Trump has shown to this cause, I believe has no precedent, certainly in the modern history of this great cause. We have been helped by many who have aligned with us, some who could not be here today. I do want to recognize Resident Commissioner Jennifer Gonzalez of Puerto Rico, nuestra hermana de la isla de Puerto Rico que está junto con nosotros, who's with us on this issue. But what I want you to know is that in every single one of those instances in which the President spoke about Cuba, he also spoke about Brigade 2506. Because a few weeks before the election, for the first time in decades, he went to visit their museum, where they endorsed him, meaning the first time in decades that they had endorsed a presidential candidate. And there isn't a single time that I have spoken to the President about Cuba that he has not mentioned the brigade. And that strikes me because it reminds us that almost 60 years ago, when they were young men willing to fight and to die for the freedom of their homeland, they made an extraordinary sacrifice. And perhaps some of them felt that the time to make a difference for them had passed. But I want them to know that almost 60 years later, they have made a difference. That meeting and their efforts, I believe, as much as anything else, has brought us to this day.